What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is November 1st of 2017. Well, folks, as you all keep up with the channel, you know that a few days out of each week, I spend some time to cover the most recent daily price action, news, and topics related to cryptocurrencies. And today we've got a lot to talk about on November 1st. We've got to talk about, of course, the market leaders, more specifically Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Along with that, we have some serious headlines to cover. CME Group launching Bitcoin futures, a massive opportunity for institutional money to pour into Bitcoin, and we'll talk about the effects of that. Along with that, we're going to be talking about some positive news. Zimbabwe adopting Bitcoin in times of currency crisis, serving as an optimal solution for people who are now losing their purchasing power because their governments and their banks aren't looking out for them. And last up, we have to talk about, yes, I know, right? Non-crypto markets. We're going to be talking about the stock market, and we're going to be talking about how Deutsche Bank is talking about the potential death of fiat money, or at least a credit analyst at Deutsche Bank, which at least is a good sign to at least see some of the bankers are waking up. All right, so let's go ahead, let's dive into it and take a look at the price action. Starting off, we're talking about the big leader itself, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has been the topic of rage over the past few hours, especially as we mentioned at the beginning of the video with the futures announcement, which is definitely good news for Bitcoin in the sense of its price going up. So whether or not, institutional money getting involved in Bitcoin is good or bad, it's happening. We've been talking about this for the past few months on the channel, that eventually, once the legal regulation gets passed, futures will start to trade for Bitcoin, and it is happening right now. There's talks about it right now with CME Group, which is very big news. So we'll look at the headline in just a few minutes. But again, a lot of the price action for the new daily candle has been shortly lived. There was quite a big run up here over the past few hours, which has led to a drastic sell-off in altcoins. However, we're seeing that Bitcoin is definitely showing its signs of volatility right now, whether or not it can hold at these levels. And going into the fork, of course, I think you're not going to see this kind of momentum sustain itself. So again, we're gonna keep on pressing the fact that again, Bitcoin has blown out of the expectations. I was generally wrong about it. As you all know, I was calling for Bitcoin more likely than not to almost kind of treat this as a mini head and shoulders and start to pull back down and find support at 5,000. But we didn't get that. We got the futures news. So again, news comes in and it can completely change our technical expectations. So again, I was wrong on it though. I'll give full credit to that. However, this is definitely, again, keeping me consistent on the idea that altcoins are probably still a better position to watch, because the more this number moves up for Bitcoin, the more likely there is an opportunity for altcoins to step in and have a sharp rebound. You don't want to be caught in altcoins. You don't want to be two steps behind the market where you bought in here, bought into altcoins down here and Bitcoin's up here. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've been behind it. I need to get into Bitcoin now. And then you rush in when it's starting to sell off up here, and then altcoins rebound. Don't be two steps ahead. Don't be two steps against the market. Be two steps ahead of the market. Think ahead. And if you got in the wrong position, for example, of course, as you all know, I have a majorly altcoin position here. At the same time, I'm not going to be panic selling here. Bitcoin's at all new comparative highs today. Again, I hold a Bitcoin position 20 to 25% at any given moment, and because of that, I'm not losing like crazy. And most of the USD valuation of my portfolio is actually held. It's just simply the fact that altcoins are losing comparative value to Bitcoin. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's nothing to beat yourself up over about. Not to mention not something to make you FOMO and then pick up someone else's bags as they go to the cheap altcoins that are at pretty nice discounts today. So speaking of altcoins, Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, still not showing any signs of real optimism comparative to Bitcoin. Again, ever since we had the break of the descending triangle, this has been absolutely bad news for Ethereum. Now, its USD value hasn't really lost too much, still maintaining its market cap relatively well, but the momentum isn't there like it is for Bitcoin. And I think this has, of course, a lot to do with the forks, as well as getting futures listed for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's number one, so it's going to be hard for it to keep up, even though Ethereum is number two. But with the futures news and having institutional money like that, until Ethereum gets that, it's going to be kind of a rocketing for Bitcoin and a bye-bye to Ethereum in the sense of USD valuation. However, at these levels, it could be a very plausible idea that you might want to start considering looking at Ethereum as a potential buy opportunity. And of course, no official recommendation, but definitely better down here than it was up here when we were obviously seeing a descending triangle form. So, especially after we had the breakthrough. But again, I'm getting more and more comfortable with the idea that Ethereum comparative to Bitcoin might not be the worst idea. And as we take a look here at the weekly, that really starts to show that this is sold off a little, maybe a little too much. But we'll have to see. It could very well go lower. We have to see, and I'm going to have to eventually pull up Bittrex because I'm not getting the full price action history here. And if we want to do some real technical analysis on it, we're going to have to do that. So I'll probably be using Binance or Bittrex in the future for Ethereum, whichever one gives me the most price action history. Next up is Bitcoin Cash. Now, I know a lot of you have been asking about this. As we look here on the daily, this is starting to gain some traction and some serious volume. We actually had the most volume in Bitcoin Cash just the other day comparative to the absolute run-up we had back after a few weeks after the launch during the fork in August. So, is Bitcoin Cash going to be an optimal holding going into the fork? That's what a lot of people have been asking me. It could be. I don't think Bitcoin Cash is going to take off long term. I think there's what you're finding right now is a lot of shilling on the end of Roger Ver. Not saying that it's not justified, but at the same time, Bitcoin Cash is not, on a logistical sense, my favorite fork. I don't think just increasing the block size will sustain itself. I think that it leads towards centralization, as I talked about in my most recent video on the SegWit2x fork, which I recommend you go watch if you're confused about what's going on in this space and the new fork that's coming in mid-November. However, I definitely will say that on the technical side, it's holding the mass majority of this, this kind of miniature run-up we had, and it could very well have a nice run-up. However, can it keep up with Bitcoin? That's the question, much like most altcoins now. I think that altcoins have room to move up, but I don't know if Bitcoin Cash has that room because it has been running up with Bitcoin over the past few days, and I think it's going to follow Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin starts to pull back or slow down, I think we're going to see the same with Bitcoin Cash. Again, we'll have to see though. But there's really not much I can get out of this outside of the fact that Roger Ver has been speaking very positively about this. And then not to mention on this day, we had big South Korean volume come in. If the Koreans come back in again and start pouring volume into it, that's something you're going to want to watch. If it can get over 9 million Satoshis, you might see this as a potential good item to watch going into the fork in the altcoin space. It is third place after all, so we have to give it some credibility in that sense. It has held up relatively well compared to Bitcoin over the past few weeks. So people are going to look for those leaders in the altcoin space after they've gotten ripped. They're like, okay, I want to keep it in altcoins, but I need to find some players that can make me decent returns. So again, kind of like how Vertcoin is doing well, a lot of those kind of alternatives that have been killing it compared to Bitcoin, even in a relatively bearish altcoin market. You find those kind of players. So again, what I look for here to give you some technical subjectivity, if it holds, if we close green or relatively up on the day and we can maintain above 7 million Satoshis and start to curve up here to 9 million, that could mean we have a breakout candle or two for Bitcoin Cash, or maybe a few going into the fork. I don't know. Again, it depends on the politics of adoption and the mining community. I could ramble on about it for hours, but there's not much of a consensus here. Then again, it is on the lower end. You're not buying it up here, which was ridiculous. Next up, we have Ripple. Ripple, the bankers are not faring well, at least in the sense of the value with Ripple. Ripple is not keeping up with Bitcoin. The complete optimism that was rushing into it is now dead. I think this is probably one of the few altcoins I don't mind seeing as going down. But again, Ripple, still in a fundamental sense, is still being adopted. But, if you were to do swing trading opportunities, these are the kind of levels you want to buy, not when it was, curving back up. Again, it's at relative lows for the past few months. It's back down to where it was, compared to Bitcoin back in April. So that's pretty. It's a pretty stellar downtrend comparative to Bitcoin. So we have to keep an eye on that. Again, like Ethereum, these are much better levels to buy. As we saw when it came down here last time, we had a pretty fast rebound. So I think the rebound in altcoins is going to happen much faster. It's dependent on the fork, but we will have to see. I wonder if we'll see this kind of level out here and start to do what we saw over here, where we saw, of course, finding support at a big even. But really, there is no serious support level outside of where it is now. So if it continues downward, this could be a bad sign for Ripple. Right now, though, I think you're going to start seeing this curve down here, much like we're going to see with Ethereum and a few other players. Litecoin as well. I think Litecoin, I've been continuing to watch this, and I think what you're going to see is, much like I said with Ripple and Ethereum, the curving of price action. I think you're going to see, if I can actually, get the right tool here, a slow descent along the even here. I know that's not exactly on 7 million, but, or sorry, 700,000 Satoshis, but my trading view drawing is not the best. I'm no artisan, but I am a charter. And basically, I think we're generally going to see this falter back down to 700,000 Satoshis. Very nice even number that we could see this falter to. And, we've seen Litecoin react very heavily with, big even numbers in the past, finding support 2 times at the million, if we go back three times where we saw support at the million Satoshi range. 700,000 Satoshis is a pretty big number. Question is, can it keep up with Bitcoin? And if Bitcoin seriously rallies, I think it would falter through. But honestly, it has some room to go down percentage-wise, down to 700,000 Satoshis. I think that'd be a fair level to look. And if it can get a few days of sliding support along that level, consider maybe looking into it for a trade. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on it. Of course, not financial advice, just my opinion. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh this here just to get the most recent price because it's changing every second. Bitcoin has been obliterating any other altcoin right now. Well, except for a few select ones. EOS has been doing very nice as well. And we actually did a pretty good calling on that. However, Bitcoin is it's knocking out altcoins right now, and there is really one main reason for this, and I don't think it honestly has too much to do with the fork. The fork has been mostly priced in. The second thing that is carrying this to our eventual target, I think that we'd actually called about earlier, where we saw Bitcoin going to 7,500, is the futures. And I'm going to bounce over here, kind of jump the gun a little bit. Bitcoin is going to be listed on 2 futures exchanges. The biggest one being CME Group, okay? So as we go down here, CME Group is going to be, which is the leading marketplace for derivatives. Now, if you don't know what derivatives are, know that it's a big deal. I don't want to go into the long, drawn-out description of derivatives markets, but if you can't notice that 1 quadrillion is a very large number, I mean, no rocket scientist is needed for that. But again, in Chicago, CME Group is a massive marketplace for futures trading. And if Bitcoin gets into this market, you're obviously aware, most likely by that number, this is institutional money. Now, on a moral sense, again, I don't really like this. I don't like institutional money getting involved. I don't care if it makes my portfolio double tomorrow. That's, on a moral sense, something I relatively disagree with. However, in a free market, in a free society, and one where markets adapt and they adopt, it was inevitable. This is something we've eventually talked about since back before the first fork. Back in July, we were talking about this, how institutional money will eventually come into cryptocurrencies. Not really, again, on a moral sense, something I'm happy about. I think that's going to encourage centralization. I think more larger players can instantly step into the market and acquire large amounts of Bitcoin. But if it becomes too centralized, I think we just give up on Bitcoin in a sense after some time. But of course, the price is, in the short term, going to probably continue going higher over the next few weeks, next few months, as talks of this continue. But again, it's not exactly there yet. Legal regulation is still being developed. However, of course, again, it's still it could. So they're still in the works of this. That's the thing. It's set to roll out. So long as this isn't officially launched, we can't be too sure on it. There's been a lot of talks of the Winklevoss twins and a lot of other people in the crypto space coming out and saying, oh, we're going to launch, an ETF or futures or other different types of tradable kind of assets you can own for Bitcoin, and it hasn't happened yet. Legal regulators have not supported it. However, if CME is looking to do it, that's a different story, and much more towards the side of it likely happening. Now, when you're holding the future as well, I think it's important to understand, like it says here, would allow individuals, investors, more institutional, to bet on the future price of Bitcoin without having to actually hold the coin itself. So in an already relatively speculative market of digital currencies, you're bringing on Wall Street and giving them .com 2.0 to play with. Yeah, this could go pretty high. It's interesting to see this all happening because I've been waiting and really curious as to when it was going to happen, but it's happening now. I thought it was going to honestly happen in about a year or so, but blockchain is continuing to expand into the hearts and minds of many people, and the returns comparative to US dollars are looking very nice. Now, why is this? Well, because a lot of people are looking for alternatives not only to fiat currency, as we'll talk about later on, but along with this, markets are quite overextended. Equities markets have been producing fantastic returns over the past few months. Actually, for the past few years, ever since really the recovery in 2009 after the crash in 07 and 08. So we're left at a time where all three major market indexes are sitting at valuations that are fresh highs. And much like in the crypto world, we apply those same principles of buy low, sell high. We don't want to be urgent to, think that the good times are just going to keep on rolling. Now, to be fair, markets have seen a lot of optimism. There could be different factors for this. I know there's talks of tax cuts, things like that. But we have to think at the end of the day what an investor is thinking, not so much on the fundamental side. On the fundamental side, if you want to know my opinion, I think markets are completely overvalued. I think, I could go all wacko anti-finance on you. However, as someone who loves to trade and understand markets, I think markets are absolutely overvalued. Then again, they could still have some room to go up to around, for example, maybe here on the S&P 500. I think we're going to see them see resistance at big even numbers, whether that be 2,600 here or 2,700. I don't really know. I'm not someone who's going to try to sell you gold as a gold salesman and say, the market's coming to a crash, buy my gold. I'm not here to do that for you. But I will be saying in the sense that crypto is going to be the alternative for investors, okay? Now, why is this? There's a few different things we have to consider, and this is not the traditional stuff you'd probably hear on CNBC if you're into the stock market at all. I've had a lot of you have lost interest like I have because crypto has been absolutely phenomenal, and I believe in it in a moral sense. But there's an important thing you need to watch, and it's something that you'll hear about on CNBC and stuff, but it's the way that you approach reading it that matters. This is what's known as the Cboe Volatility Index, the Chicago Board of Exchange Volatility Index. And it measures the volatility of the general market, the S&P 500. Okay? So when you're looking at the VIX, I know this might look confusing, and it might look opposite of markets in 08. As you can see, this went up during 08. Now, again, this isn't a stock. This isn't something you can really. There are some different types of ETFs you can own to trade different ways on the volatility index. However, this is not an actual index or an actual fund that you can own or any type of asset. This is a measurement of what's known as volatility. And in very general speak, when markets are moving excessive amounts in price action in a certain period of time, volatility is increased. If markets aren't moving down that much, if they aren't showing excessive volatility in a short period of time, volatility is low. And as this continues to descend, volatility is decreasing. As it goes up, much like it did in 08 when markets were selling off and dropping massive percentage points each day and each week, you had growing volatility. So what we're seeing here is something that a lot of people will be optimistic on. They say, oh, Nick, markets are at excessively low volatility. Don't you know? This is good news. The punch bowl is completely full and we're having a great time here. Every corporation's reporting record earnings and yada, yada, whatever. It's not the right perspective to have, in my opinion. if you want my, it's no, and this is not just a doomsday kind of like, oh, the market's going to crash. This is just simple market, principles here. If we think about it in a logistical sense, if we're thinking ahead of the game here, we're thinking not tomorrow or next week, we're thinking in the next few months, maybe the next year or two. Let's take a look at this VIX chart. Where else have we seen the VIX this low in the past few years? Right here. Right before '08, when the times were good and rolling and everything felt fine and dandy. And then '08 hit. And it wasn't pretty. Now, I don't think we're going to get '08. Again, I'm not fudding, not FOMOing on crypto or anything. But what I am thinking is that we are going to get a correction, much like we saw back in kind of 2015 and 2011, where a little more volatility came in the market. And what you're going to see is you're going to see traders and investors move over towards crypto because they're seeing the kind of returns they're making. And as you all know, people from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are leaving their day jobs and they're going over to create their new ICOs. Whether or not that's, sustainable, whatever, I think honestly they think it's .com 2.0 and they're getting involved in it. However, the money is going to move, and because of that, you're going to see some sell-off in markets, in my opinion, in traditional equities, and this will lead to money flowing into cryptocurrencies. And it could be the push over the next few months for Bitcoin to really reach 10,000. That's I think the big even we're all looking for. Now again, still kind of a long shot, but I think Bitcoin will obviously eventually reach there. Question is not if it will, the question is really when that will happen, So again, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I definitely would say, look towards history and look towards the indicators that people aren't looking at when everything's going good. Be a few steps ahead of the market, just like you would in crypto. Again, I'm not very bullish on equities at this moment. They've been quite overextended. I haven't been trading equities for the past few months. I've been trading cryptocurrencies. I've been investing in cryptocurrencies. I've been long on the idea of blockchain and the idea of Bitcoin. I love it, not only in a moral sense, but in an actual, in a sensible or a sensible way. I think that it will have a future. So again, whether you're trading or investing, I think you should turn towards crypto in a sense, or at least look at it. But I'm not a financial advisor. Anyways, to end off this daily review on a positive note, whereas we're talking about the death of fiat currency, Deutsche Bank coming out, as we stated, saying, or not Deutsche Bank as a whole, but one of the credit analysts, Jim Reed, coming out and saying, is this the beginning of the end for fiat money? We have a very positive headline that is proving that. A country like Zimbabwe that has been hit hard by failed monetary policy by banking systems and their own government has been coming around to Bitcoin after the Golix exchange has launched. And now it has been confirmed that over the past month since they've been open, we were really excited when this came out and we knew that it was definitely trending. But over the past month, $1 million in transactions have gone through for Zimbabwe citizens through this exchange. Now, I know a lot of you out there like, $1 million. I mean, it's nothing, dude. Sorry. Good news for them. But at the end of the day, folks, this is really good. This is opening the door to people getting involved who can't build expensive mining rigs, who can't, really, sure, anyone can participate in mining Bitcoin, but it's not sensible for people, like these citizens. So they have to rely on cash to exchange. So again, this is very good news for the short time being, especially while Zimbabwe is in a currency crisis. It has been really bad over the past few months if you keep up with it. But over the past few years, I think the joke, everyone kind of generally gets the joke if they know anything about money, where it's like, there's a lot of African nation states where literally everyone's a billionaire or a trillionaire. But that's because their currency is so devalued and they have hyperinflation. And it's not such a funny subject once you really learn about it. It's very depressing. And it's a big reason why, even after years of technological innovation, these citizens in these countries cannot evolve financially. They can't actually, build industrialized cities and, bring standard of living to people. And they're still living off $1 to $2 a day. It's because their financial system is messed up. A lot of them are unbanked from the world. Andreas Antonopoulos talks about this a lot on his channel, and I love that he talks about it because there's a serious issue at hand. There's a lot of people in the world who do not have access to a monetary system that's sensible, that's feasible, and seeing stuff like this makes me happy. Of course, I would much rather them do it in a more, decentralized without exchange manner. But I mean, we're all participating on exchanges as well. So, I think it's a good start. It's at least getting people, giving people the opportunity in these less fortunate countries to participate in something like this, which is very heartwarming to see, seeing as I truly believe in blockchain. And it's good to see the company's profitable as well. I hope that encourages more people out there to open exchanges and to give more open resources for people to participate. We're all about onboarding people into the crypto revolution. This isn't a movement that's going to grow off of 1% of the population adopting it. No, we need everyone to be a part of this revolution, to unbank the world and bring people into the cryptoverse. We really need to get away from the traditional finance system. And these signs like this, especially in a place where it's so necessary, is really heartwarming. But anyways, that's it for the daily update, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching the video. If you all like this, again, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. The daily updates are a relatively new series, but if you all liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And then also leave a comment down below on what you'd like me to cover in the next few videos. But until then, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. #LongTermInvesting. Stay tuned.